Hello everybody, welcome to an exciting Wednesday edition of the TraderMerlin show. As you guys all know, Nvidia reported earnings after market close today, the highly anticipated one. And it was interesting, about an hour before the market closed, there was a whole bunch of speculation, maybe an hour and a half before the market closed, a whole bunch of speculation focused on JP Morgan's earnings estimates as well as Goldman Sachs estimates. And someone said they'd been leaked. Who knows whether it was just fabricated and somebody pumping it. But the numbers that they were posting were like huge beats that would have, in my mind, vaulted Nvidia higher. Now, at the end of the day, the numbers did come out looking pretty good. But I want to show you guys something here I found very, very interesting. And I don't, as you guys know, I don't trust the financial markets. I don't trust CNBC. I don't trust Fox. I don't trust Bloomberg. I don't trust any financial news outlet. I am one in the camp that believe that this whole market is rigged. Here is my proof of that. And by the way, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. How long ago, you guys tell me, I mean, we're live right now. This is, it's 2:05. How long ago, in maybe minutes or hours, did Nvidia release their earnings? You guys type in the chat. How long ago was that number released to the public and everyone went, yay, here we go? Just curious. What's Nvidia in Latin? I don't know. Nvidia. I'm not sure. I don't know. How long ago did they release that? And the reason I bring that up is I wanted to show you something here that was produced. Oh, they just updated it. So there was an article that was out earlier today. Okay, so 1:20, right, by the dip, so 1:20 Pacific time, 35 minutes ago, you know, about 35 minutes ago, right? I think we'd all agree with that. So it's funny because I look for a printout typically that shows all the numbers for everybody. And I thought this is really, really funny. I went out and just one of the ones I found was this from, it said Nvidia reports 122% revenue growth on surging demand for data center chips. That was out like 2 hours ago. Just putting that perspective, this was out 2 hours ago. It actually says here was released at noon Eastern time and then updated 10 minutes ago. So I had this thing up earlier, like long before the earnings came out. I'm looking at the earnings numbers. So something smells really weird here in the fact that I could get all the earnings numbers because I was reading these earnings numbers and I'm like, okay, I see the EPS and I'm like, oh, well, they're supposed to report after market close. So I go over here and look at the market close. And then you can see it reacted right here. So really strange to see this headline here, which was originally posted at noon Pacific or noon Eastern time, so 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's just bizarre to me. I just don't trust the system, guys. A ghost in the machine right there. Somebody knew something, and lo and behold, our numbers were there. So let me just show the graphic here to start the show, which was Nvidia does it again. I wanted a picture of Jensen Huang wearing a crown because this guy crushing it again. I didn't get a chance to listen to the details of the comments about what their forecasts were, but they did seem to raise their numbers going forward. I'm going to run through just a couple real quick numbers here. I could keep reading more and more and more about their different numbers, but some things in here very interesting for Nvidia, which for me, it feels like I should be potentially buying some. So let's look at the numbers here as they were presented today. So number one, you have the one that everybody cares about, their earnings per share. They came out at 68 cents versus 64 cents. So great, they beat earnings. Now remember, in their previous earnings announcement, they raised their outlook and forecast and everything going forward, and all the analysts were excited about that one and jumped on it. That's right, Kenny. The popcorn. I did not get my popcorn tray, the graphics set up for today, but I will have one soon. I talked to my graphic designer, Tim, and maybe if I can scrounge together a little bit, I'll redo the whole graphics package for this show because I feel it's a little outdated. I mean, I have some cool stuff that I never use, right? Like when I bring new instructors on, I love to do stuff like this, my little trader profile, which I think is a cool graphic, or here's this one for today. How about our market update talking about the current situation? So I don't know. I like some of the ones I have. And the one I really want to get back is the donkey of the day, right? I need to get this donkey of the day better with the donkey sound in the background. But those are the ones. And I'll use a couple here today just for fun, just because why not? So their first number here is that their earnings, which of course is great. Second number was their revenue, came out at $30.04 billion. Expectations were $28.7 billion. So on those two numbers, much better, right? Looking great. Things did not look like they're slowing down at all. When you exceed analyst expectations, that looks pretty good. Next, I'm definitely going to keep the donkey, Tomasina. I thought this was interesting. This was their forecast. So this is their expectations going forward. 32.5 billion in revenue for the next quarter. 31.7 is what analysts are expecting. So they're already higher than what analysts expect. So again, Nvidia basically saying, oh, you think we're going to make this much? No, we're going to make more than that. Pretty bold way to go about it. So good for them. We know who the donkey is every day. There's several donkeys. I have a new contender for donkey of the day, by the way, but there's so much behind me explaining it all. I don't know if I could probably get myself into trouble, so I may have to hold off on that one until a lot of the dust settles here, and then maybe I can't, because there's another donkey. Actually, no, he's not a donkey. He's an individual that is incredibly shrewd, sly, conniving, manipulating, and ultimately makes everybody else the donkey for believing in it. But that's a different story for another day. Continuing on to those numbers, I wanted to bring this part up here because I think that this is one of my favorite piece. Net income more than doubled. That is a stat that any business should look at and go, wow, I would love to have those numbers. Net income more than doubled to 16.6 billion or 67 cents per share in the quarter. Their net income was 16.18 billion. So when people talk about growth versus value stocks, right? A growth stock is a stock that kind of trods along and slowly builds up, but doesn't have huge jumps in their earnings. When you have over 100% gain in your earnings, your net income, by the way, not just your revenue, but your net income, man, that is a huge testament to what you're doing, that your business overall. And I'm going to bring up the Nvidia chart here, which I guess I could use one of my graphics. You know, we've got there we go. There's my chart of the week. I love the graphics. I just don't use them enough. I'm too busy focusing on all the other things. I'm trying to, not mess up on the show. We had looked at different levels for Nvidia potentially, going into this earnings announcement. And right now I'll put a horizontal red line right at where we are at now. Let's get a horizontal line, and we are right here. That's actually a blue line already. So not bad, actually. It seems like a really small pullback on the grand scheme of things. I'm looking for it tomorrow. I really hope it does sell off and drop lower so I can sell some puts or buy some of these positions outright long. However, man, when you look at those numbers, they beat on net income, they beat on revenue. Almost every metric they have, they've beaten on net income more than doubled. It's really kind of leaving you scratching your head going, then why are they down 5% in the after-hour session? At one point, we were down a little over 8% in our after-hour session, and I don't know. I definitely have to read through what was said specifically line by line after hours, because those numbers would be telling me that this thing needs to go up. And Oliver says your bar was set too high by the market makers. Possibly, but if you look at what Nvidia just did, they just raised their targets even more, right? So whatever the analysts had expected, 28.7 billion, they beat that. And I guess the industry set that bar at 28.7 billion in revenue, expecting maybe they're going to get 31, 32? It seems strange to me that you would set that bar, and then if they exceeded it, that you wouldn't be happy with that. So maybe the market got a little bit ahead of themselves on Nvidia. All in all, down right now about 4.7%. That could completely change by morning. My gut tells me when you have numbers that are this good, that as we get into the open tomorrow, that thing will probably be rallying up into the open, and we'll see a bullish day tomorrow for Nvidia. But that's just gut instinct about what I've seen happen with earnings like this. And again, this is the most pivotal company right now, in my opinion, in our market. So when they're posting numbers like that, that's a great sign. It seems like everything's looking fantastic for now. I didn't see that, Chris. I'd have to look at it. I'd have to look at that. I mean, again, I didn't have time to read through it all. I was too busy building other stuff for you guys and making sure I got content for today's show. But I'll read through that later on and see if I get any more clarity on what did they lower? Where were their weaknesses? Where do they think that things might slow down just a little bit? The other piece in this, which I think, let me give a little shout out to, who was that? That was Liz. Right on. The big part here, another big part, is a $50 billion buyback. Now, when you've got a $3 trillion valuation company. 50 billion seems like a drop in the bucket, but 50 billion is bigger than most American companies as far as valuation goes. That is a lot of money. And remember, in my opinion, you can disagree with me if you want. It's totally fine. I believe that share buybacks are the ultimate manipulator of a stock's price. If you want to manipulate your stock price higher, then you do a share buyback. It's plain and simple, because the shares you buy, you're removing from some supply. And therefore, when you do your calculations for a lot of the statistical data, it's using float, not outstanding shares. And all of a sudden, those numbers get skewed. It's different. The metrics, earnings per share will change and things like that. So I'm not a big fan. I think it's total manipulation. But what it does mean is that there's a much greater probability that prices are going to go up for Nvidia shares because they're buying so much of it. So here's your chart of it as we speak. Obviously, we've been looking at this a bunch over the past couple of days. Looks great, right? A little bit of a pullback right now. Again, we'll see what happens on tomorrow's open. My gut tells me that it'll start off a little bit lower and work its way higher by the end of day, because most of the stuff that I'm seeing looks absolutely fantastic on their earnings numbers. Now, let me see. Steve says, do we know him? Yep. It's so hard for a company size to double. Exactly. Right, Steve? He says most companies are head over heels if they get 15%. Yeah, 15's great. If you can get year-over-year revenue growth and earnings growth of 15%, that's good. You're growing. But over 100%, man, that's just... I'd like to go back and check kind of what that revenue growth has been, quarter over quarter, year over year, percentage-wise, and see what they've been doing. If you look at the current numbers, they earn 68 cents per share. The quarter before that, they were at 60 cents. Before that, they were at 51. So they've been slowly increasing their earnings numbers. There really hasn't been a disappointment. And the last time that they missed earnings was back in 2022, November of 2022. It was October's earnings announcement. They still made money. They came out at, call it 6 cents, and their estimate was 7 cents. So they just missed that one. But other than that, they don't disappoint typically on earnings. This might be even more reliable than Microsoft, than Apple. You have one miss. Before that, you have to go all the way back into 2015 to see the last time they missed earnings, and that was when they were expected to make 0.3 of a penny, and they made 0.1 of a penny. So pretty crazy. Hathaway is valued at $1 trillion. Do a share buyback, push price up, and then down the road do another stock split, rinse, repeat? Yes. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a stock split. But if Nvidia is buying those shares, they're retiring those shares for now. They could always bring them back to market, but they're removing them from supply, so it changes the calculations of things like earnings per share. Your earnings per share numbers are going to change, so it'll cook those books, which I think is market manipulation. Hathaway is valued at $1 trillion. He has $300 billion. Oh, Berkshire Hathaway. I didn't do anything with Berkshire. You're talking about his sale today of some more shares. Again, it's not today. It's in the last quarter, right? You don't know. You'll never know the day he sells anything because it won't be disclosed. These guys, those hedge funds, those big firms only have to do quarterly reports of their numbers. All right, so that's your Nvidia piece for the day. Again, I was really surprised. I like the numbers. I like the chart. Again, I have to wait and see what that pullback looks like. Where's it going to come into? If you look at some of the other companies out there, let me just bring up, let's say, an hourly time frame. Let's go 1 hour. And there's your rollover on Nvidia, which of course is bringing down your NASDAQ just a wee little bit, which has had a nice, 5-6 day sell-off here. But if you look at something like Apple sold off a little bit, but not bad. Apple is only down 0.68%. And after hours, the hit from Nvidia, which, theoretically should be impacting the market more, it's only brought down Apple 0.3%. How about Microsoft? Microsoft down 1% after that announcement. So, okay, feeling a little bit of it. Google, or Alphabet, down 0.46. What about Meta? You're down 0.48. So they are feeling a little bit of that pull down by Nvidia, but really not that bad. It was one of those things that going into it, you guys heard me talk about it yesterday. I'm staying out of it just because of the uncertainty, and we could have had a 20% drop, could have had a 30% gain. Just too much for me to play with that level of uncertainty, and hopefully you guys sidestepped that one too and didn't get in trouble on it. John D says, how do you think Nvidia earnings reaction affect the tech sector in general? That's the $50 trillion question, is it not, John? Based off those numbers and the optimism going forward, and again, I want to look a little more in depth on what was said specifically. I didn't get a chance to read through everything. As you know, there's a lot of information being released on Nvidia today. One would conclude that that is a rosy outlook for the entire sector, right? If Nvidia is expecting more demand for all these chips I talked about on yesterday's show or the day before, then that's a sign, and they would know best, right? They would know what the interests are from their customers. Are they buying more? Are they slowing down? And if those numbers are put in there, setting that lofty bar, then that would lead me to believe that companies like Microsoft and Apple and Meta and Google are all going to do better in the next quarter. Just based off of that. Now, that's only 1 point data. Obviously, I need to look at the fundamentals for each of those individual companies, which I have not. I'm a technical person. But yeah, it just screams optimism. Now, if you are Nvidia and you're Jensen Huang and you feel things slowing down, you set yourself a lower bar. You lower that bar a little bit so that when you can beat it, you get this nice big pop in your share price. So by the fact that they're raising their outlook going forward, to me, speaks very positively about tech. Those are all Nvidia customers, hyperscalers. Yep. Did you sell any puts on Crowd today? No, I did not. Premiums were insane. They were paying 50. I know. Remember, Steve, my whole thing was I'm not touching anything. It's funny because I had a couple friends call me today asking about, what trades I was making. I'm like, I'm not putting anything in a swing trade account. I don't want to go through the uncertainty of this Nvidia earnings. It went off fairly mild, but it could have been extremely dramatic. Now, CrowdStrike, there's another one. Let's go CRWD. So CrowdStrike jumped up about 3.8% in the after hours. Let me switch this down to a 5-minute time frame here. So you can see they were down today, selling off, and all of a sudden a nice little pop, currently trading at $273.75. They beat earnings. You can see the numbers here. They were supposed to make 96 cents per share. They came out at $1.04, and I don't have all the other metrics there, so we'll just keep it at that. But, they beat earnings as well, and I was really wanting them to sell off. I would love to see CrowdStrike just crater tomorrow so I could sell some puts, sell the 240s, 220s, 200s. Yeah. Steve says, I'd love to own CrowdStrike at 200. I would too. Yeah. When we broke down and we had that big sell-off, I sold the 220s. When we were at 220, you're going to get a lot of questions on this one. When we were at 220, I sold the 252 strikes. And I collected, $30 worth of premium on the contract. So it was one of those ones where I knew it was going back up. I'd already sold the 225.50, so I already had some shares at that price, exercised, and was like, CrowdStrike's going to rally back up on this one. So it was basically doubling down on that bad boy. And yeah, I think CrowdStrike long-term going to be absolutely fine. CrowdStrike's a fairly dominant player in its space. They had a couple big hiccups. But, you look at all that room to recoup. If you are one of the Fibonacci guys, I know we've got some Fibonacci people in this room. Let's go from, it's so hard to get these things, there you go. And do it to this low here. If you're looking at fibs, which I know some of you are, come on, Merlin. A 38% retracement is really what we got just a couple days ago. If you're someone who looks for the 50% retracement, well, you're looking at 300, which would be a nice logical target for CrowdStrike. So, that might help identify those retracement values. I personally would like to be a long-term holder of CrowdStrike at lower levels, not at 273. Bummer. 220s are paying. Well, I'm glad you did well on that one, man. Okay, so let's do that SMCI. So this Big Gap says SMCI premiums were ridiculous for even this Friday. Yeah, but you're playing with fire, brother. You're playing with. We talked about this yesterday, right? You got a company down another 4%. Down 19% today. Remember yesterday, a lot of people were like, "Oh, what about buying this one?" There's your chart from yesterday. If you look at not including today's data. So over the past, let's say, couple of days since that report was released, you had a decline in supercomputer of 16%. Well, it dropped another 19% today, and it's selling off right now in the after-hour session. What may be concerning here is what if, hypothetically, what if Hindenburg Research is right and there's accounting fraud here? If there's accounting fraud and they get regulatory investigation into it, then, you could be, you could sell those 350 puts and think you're untouchable. It's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden this thing drops 300 points overnight because of an inquiry by regulators into their accounting, that could be the kiss of death for this company. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying on the spectrum of probability right now, Hindenburg Research is probably, they've done enough research so that they couldn't be sued for libel or slander. So they got to have some information that puts them in this safe spot from a legal perspective. Because if not, then Supermicrocomputer would go after them with full force with their lawyers and sue them for slander and make a ton of money. So Hindenburg's got some details here that are probably to some extent true. If that happens, selling puts on this one, Big Eb, it sounds great. And you might get some amazing premium. I mean, you could probably sell, I don't have the chain up, but you could probably sell some puts on this bad boy right now, expiring Friday, literally getting 2 days if you did it tomorrow morning, and get yourself 2-3% for strikes that seem way out of the money, but that's a big risk. I'm not doing it. That's catching a falling knife here. Now, what if we get all the way down to this 150, 160 mark? Maybe if we get down to the 320 mark. I mean, do you sell the 320 puts here? I'll look at it tomorrow morning, let you guys know. I mean, if you can get a decent rate of return for selling the 320 puts, which is like a 25% slide from current values expiring Friday, then sure, go for it. But you got to know that there is the potential that a regulator could come in and said, we're opening a federal investigation into an accounting irregularity, and this thing's going to absolutely crater. Absolutely melt down, and I'd hate to see it on the wrong side of that one. So you got to be really, really careful with Supermicrocomputer. Yeah, when you get those premiums that are off the charts, then, yeah, you get a lot of premium. I mean, remember, this happened during the banking stuff. Myself and Corey, we both got caught with First Republic, FRCB, right? That thing was going through the same basic motions, down 30, 40, 50% day after day after day. And you're like, oh, and the premium was huge, right? I can't remember. Let's go FRCB. It's still around. Yeah, there it is. So right now you're at 1.5 pennies. But, you guys might remember back here when this thing was falling like this. When you saw this move here, a lot of people were like, oh, man, that's phenomenal. And you could, when it was trading at like $25, you could have sold the $12 puts for a week and made like 5% premium. And I think that's kind of similar, Big Eb, is where you look at it, you go, man, the premium's it's so inviting. And in that case, you're going, man, this is a bank that's at $25, and I'm selling the $12 puts. It'd have to fall 50% from here by Friday. You're like, what risk could there possibly be to me? And then womp womp, all of a sudden it just craters and keeps falling and falling and falling. So you just got to be careful, particularly when somebody's threatening accounting irregularities, that there might be fraud. That opens up much bigger investigations, which can just destroy a company. So I actually think Supermicrocomputer, SMCI, probably not going to disappear. The question is, how low does it go? Where does this thing bottom out? What is the fallout from this? And I certainly am not touching this one either. Again, I mentioned this yesterday. I'd much rather just try to hit base hits. If you're playing SMCI, you're trying to hit home runs, and by doing that, you're going to take big chances. Could you crush it on this bad boy? Sure, right? Absolutely. You could sell at the money puts on Supermicrocomputer and probably get monster premium. I can look it up. I'll look it up tomorrow. Market's closed. My strikes are gonna be all off, but you could get gigantic premium, I'm sure, if you sold the 440 strikes. Huge premium expiring Friday or next week, next month. And if it took off from here, great, you keep all that premium. But right now, that trend doesn't look good. The lawsuit doesn't look good. That just makes me way too nervous. I would not want to own SMCI until there's some clarity on what this lawsuit, or not this lawsuit, but these claims are actually alleging for Supermicrocomputer. So, good. They're fun to watch, right, Big Ab? The problem is they draw you in sometimes. You look at it, you go, oh man, maybe just one contract. Oh, just one. Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. Steve goes, I didn't know anything about that company. How stable is it? I don't know, Steve. I don't look at the fundamentals of this one, but just the price chart tells me not very stable right now. It was one of those super high flyers. And I'm always one that's very skeptical when I see a price chart that looks like this. Right? It's kind of hard to see there. But if you go back to this year, we were trading at a low in January 18th of 306. And then in a very short window of time, we talked about this on the show because I remember we're like, wow, this is crazy. 300% gain in 35 trading sessions for SMCI. And now all of a sudden it's giving it back. You know, if you take the long-term approach here, and let's add on a moving average, and this is a shorter term, so let me make this a long-term moving average just so you guys can see that, oh, that's 100. And kind of look where the average might be. Well, we're actually below it. What I've done in the past is I'll draw trend lines to kind of see what the long-term trend might be. And it looks like, in my opinion, if you draw a trend line, not a moving average, like we're coming back into it. Like we're coming back towards that trend line. So Margaret says short it. I could make the argument, Margaret, that even shorting it's insane. Because you could short it, and then SMCI sues Hindenburg for slander because they don't have any substantiating data, and all of a sudden this stock's going to just vault to the moon. So, yeah, chainsaws, my friends. Juggling chainsaws. You know what? I should... it would be funny to make a shirt, something along those lines. Like, it says, I juggle chainsaws, and it just shows a guy with no arms, right? And then the stock chart's behind it. There you go. And you know, someone bought it. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody bought this thing at $1,200, sure. Because it was all hype back here. I mean, every headline was talking about SMCI. My goodness, it was super popular, right? Nvidia uses SMCI. I thought it was the other way around too. What would Larry do? Good question. I got to get him on the program. I get old Larry back. Been a while since I chatted with that guy. So I have not reached out to Russ Allen. I'm going to have David Warner on the show next week. We'll be talking Forex. And I wanted to get his thoughts because the trends have reversed so quickly for the Japanese yen, you know, and he's always been a huge fan of that Japanese yen. Curious what his thoughts are on it now. So David Warner will be on the program on Tuesday. Again, no show on Monday. We're all going to be out barbecuing somewhere and having a great day. At least I hope you will be. So let's go real quick. Just since someone mentioned that one and brought it up, let's go look at that USD JPY. You know, this doesn't seem that alarmingly large, right? However, when you're looking at the currency for an entire economy having fallen in a very short window of time to the tune of, let me bring back to the exact numbers, 12.4% in 17 trading sessions. So 17 days, really, call it 20 days, you had the US dollar fall 12% in its purchasing power. So anybody who booked a trip to Japan for next month or something, you're like, dang it, son of a biscuit. It would have been so much better if you went a couple months ago, but this type of stuff can have a huge impact on an economy. And just like we talk about rate cuts and interest rate changes for a country, that dollar or currency fluctuations of that extent can also have a monstrous impact on the economy. Now, when you see this, I don't want you to think that right away Japan is going to just instantly start ripping, right? Meaning it's going to just, their economy is going to do horribly good or bad. Either way, you can make the argument. But this will have an impact on their economy over time. It'll probably take 9 months or so, a year, to really factor in this giant drop in valuation. But the more that this falls, the more it'll start to hurt tourism in Japan. The more that this falls, that means that the yen's getting stronger. That means that it's going to cost us more to buy Japanese goods and services. So that could start to have an impact on that Japanese economy. The dynamics of currencies can be just as powerful as interest rates. And of course, these things all go hand in hand. Juggling change. Let's check the Hot Tub Time. I don't remember that one, Chris. I love the movie Hot Tub Time Machine. That was a great one. Let's see. One other question that came through from John, and it's one that I have not had time to research, but I'll lightly cover it. It says, are you concerned with the crazy tax proposals by Kamala? How will that our crypto, impact the crypto I'm holding? So Kamala has many things, and I have a special we're gonna do. I'll probably do it early October, right? November's the election. I want to get as much data as possible, make sure everything's solidified with our candidates and their viewpoints, and then I'm gonna do a show very specifically on here's the two candidates. Here's their issues, and based off of these issues, what industries and sectors might benefit from their objectives, right? The things that they say they're going to do. Well, one of the ones that's getting a lot of attention is from Kamala that she's going to tax unrealized gains, which I've received a couple messages from friends on this one as well, and you kind of have to read through a little bit. So for those that may not understand exactly what that means, as you know, I've got a large position in cryptocurrency, and I've been holding it for years now, since 2017. I've only sold 2 positions, which I've bought back in with those positions. But really everything else I've been holding for, well, it's going on 7 years now. I have significant unrealized capital gains. And I know that I'm going to pay capital gains on that when I sell those assets, and that'll be at a specific tax bracket. The thought of having your unrealized gains tax should make everybody here kind of freak out a little bit. I think it's personally, it's nothing to do with Democrat or Republican, but I think taxing unrealized gains is moronic. I think it's a silly thing to do. However, this will not impact you. This will not impact you. This will not impact me. Well, actually, I'm arrogant by saying it won't impact you. It won't impact me because I don't have over 100 million. Okay? Steve right there says it. He says it has to be over 100 million and will never pass. I totally agree. I don't think that there's a chance. I'm kind of surprised that she would propose it, knowing that there's no way it's going to go through. So I'm not concerned at all, John, about it. Yes, I'm holding crypto, and I'm not concerned. I think this could create more problems for the bigger picture. Bigger picture being if I'm forced to pay capital gains on something that I haven't sold yet. So let's say I've got $1 million of unrealized capital gains on my crypto, right? If I'm now going to have to pay, I forgot what the number was it 25% on that? I think it was 25% on unrealized capital gains. What happens if all of a sudden my investment in crypto falls from $1 million worth of capital gains, unrealized, to I'm now losing money? I've now paid taxes on that. Now, how does the write-off work here for my loss in that position? You're making things very convoluted and messy. I don't think it'll pass. You're very right. He says, for now, it's 100 million or more. Right. And I think what you're thinking, Ken, is they'll start there and then maybe work it down lower and lower and lower. I'm with Steve on this one. I don't think it'll ever pass. It's crazy. And you got to be making 100 million or more. So it's not impacting me. I mean, I guess if I was making 100 million a year, I really wouldn't care. Just tax it. I'm fine. But, think if you're making 100 million a year and you have, unrealized gains of $100 million, well, 25%. You have to pay $25 million in taxes on it, and you haven't even closed that position yet. That seems silly to me, but not going to happen. I would say there's a 99% chance that it will die on the vine. So, yeah, I'm not worried about that at all, John. It's not impacting me, and does it open the doorway to more thinking about unrealized gains and how to do that? But yes, not worried about it. The other part there is capital gains taxes jumping, or looking at what's going to be going on with corporate taxes, right? I think that will be, from a market perspective, much more impactful because under Kamala, the proposal is to go, my memory serves me correct, the top tax bracket will go from 37% federally to 39.6%, so you got a 2.6% increase there. The other ones would be corporate taxes. And, historically, the Republicans have been great for corporations. Democrats have not been so good. Corporate tax proposal from Kamala would go from 21% to 28%. I apologize if I get these numbers wrong. It's all just coming off the top of my head. Under Trump, it would fall from 21 to 15. So if you're a business, it's pretty clear who you're voting for. If you're a business owner, you'll make a lot more money under a Trump administration because your capital gains tax won't jump to 28. It'll actually go from 21 down to 15. Hey, that adds up to quite a bit of money over time. So these are all things we'll just have to kind of figure out as time goes on and as we get closer to the election. Again, I think a lot of times they're just spitballing. They're throwing ideas out there and just kind of saying, oh, well, maybe this will work. Let's try this. Let's see if we can, get a reaction on the part of the populace. And definitely they were getting one on the unrealized capital gains. But John, not worried at all. If anything, they should just not allow loans against stock assets forced to sell. That could certainly be another good piece as well. Liz says, not only could you pay tax on something that ends up a loser, but you also maybe then forced to cash out just to be able to pay the tax. Yeah, right. And that's wrong, right, Liz? At a fundamental, if I've got these gains, like for example, in my crypto, I've got some substantial gains. And again, this is not going to impact me because I'm not making over 100 million. But I've got substantial gains. If all of a sudden I got an unrealized tax bill for 25% of my gains, I may be forced to sell some of this, which I do not want to sell, to pay off the unrealized tax. That's a silly idea. I don't know who came up with it. And again, it's they want to make these rich people pay more money. And I don't think that the rich people should necessarily pay more money. You guys let me know what you think of this. Here's I'm soapboxing now. Where's my... I should have a graphic that puts a little soapbox underneath me so I could stand on it. I believe that you and I, the average American, we're paying our fair share of taxes because we don't have an army of accountants and CPAs and shell corporations and other entities to reduce our tax exposure as much as possible. Most people here are not running their own business where they can write off everything that they're doing. When you look at someone like an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Zuckerberg, these guys, they're at a level where they have so much money that what they're doing is they are purposely building financial structures and strategies. So when it comes to their company, they're taking as much money out of there as possible, making it disappear in ways that are within the tax code, but really can only be done if you have a lot of money. And because of that, their net tax payments is going to be much lower percentage-wise than you or I. That's the part I don't like. They're just targeting TJT. So that's the part I think, I'm almost thinking it'd be best to have a flat tax. Just make it easy because everyone's tax situation is different. Be like, okay, you're all going to pay 20% tax, 25% tax, 30%, whatever. Pick a number. Just make it easy for you and I as consumers. And then when you look at somebody who's making hundreds of millions, they can't escape it by hiding and funneling all this money. You're paying that tax. Boom, done. Yeah, Margaret. Yeah, I got to say, this political situation that's enveloping or unfolding here in the U.S. is just makes me shake my head. It is what it is. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who I don't talk to very often, and he said the same thing I always say, which is like, out of 360 million people, these are the best choices we have right now. It's like, wow, okay. Oh well, just keep going. Everyone pays 10% of income tax with zero deductions. Correct. That's your baseline. Again, time would be better spent getting rid of tax loopholes that allow big guys. Yep, totally agree. I'm 100% there with you, Liz. We need to fix those little loopholes. There's all kinds of, it's funny, there's all kinds of little things that you can do that a lot of people just don't know. So I was helping a friend of mine with his taxes, and he uses TurboTax, of course. And I was like, oh, are you going to write off, $500 for donations? He's like, I didn't donate anything. He said, you don't have to. You're given a $500 deduction every year on your taxes for donations, whether you give something or not. You can just check that box and it's done. It may not seem like a lot, but, if I don't have to pay taxes on that $500, I'm saving myself a few dollars here. But a lot of people just, you don't know all the tax code, the tax loopholes, everything. VB says, is everyone moving back to New York City in 2025 after tax cuts expire? I don't know. I don't want to live in New York. Not yet. I have zero interest in living in New York. I like to visit New York. It's fun. But other than that, I want to be where it's warm. And if I could go somewhere else, I was debating Florida a few years back. When I purchased my place in Southern California, I was actually looking at Miami. And I could get some amazing penthouse suites in Miami in 2009 when the markets crashed for pennies on the dollar. And same thing in Las Vegas, but I ended up buying here in Southern California. So my timing was great, but I got to deal with, in Florida, I got to deal with the heat, the humidity, and some of them wackos down there, man. I'll tell you, if what does it say? If you go to YouTube and just type in "a man in Florida" and just leave it, and you'll just see it, like, it auto-populates just the craziest things. You're like, what? That is just bizarre. Anyway, sorry. I know Les here is from Florida. I didn't mean to offend you, Les. Added value tax, informal economy pay their share. Under Reagan, you could write off interest payments to credit cards. Remember that? I don't. I was a little too young. I remember at that time, I think I might have been in third or fourth grade. So I wasn't really much on the tax scene back then, Margaret. That's it. Tax nations, unless you were itemizing your deductions, opposed to taking the standard. You used to be able to do it, but I'm not sure. I just know that every year I have a CPA that does mine as well. I don't usually do schedules. I just do the 1041. Although he does itemize some stuff for me. Yeah, he's doing a lot of different things for me. But from my understanding, you can take that deduction. I'm not 100%. I'm not a tax person. Talk to a CPA. Let's see. All right. So that was it for me. As far as as far as trades go, I actually did make some trades today. I wasn't planning on it, but I did. And the trade today was on Rivian. As you guys know, I like Rivian. I do like the vehicle. I think that they're one of the few that's giving Tesla a run for its money. You're starting to see them all over here in Orange County. So again, I sold the $12 strikes expiring on the 20th, which is pretty risky given what's going on with this chart right now. But long term, I think I'll be okay owning it. And that's going to be for September 20th. So I'll put a little vertical line here for that Friday expiration. The rate of return on that was 2%. So I'll get a 2% rate of return for less than 30 days. And in order to make me a loser on this one, Rivian would have to fall roughly 25% from current levels in the next, let's go to the exact number of days, in the next 16 days. So I'm all right with that one. That's the only trade I made today. But tomorrow should be a whole new ball game. I'm hoping for a bigger drop so I can get active and start selling a bunch of puts tomorrow and maybe buy some directional. But there you go. All right, let me go into your economic calendar and your earnings calendar for tomorrow. Of course, we do have some stuff to talk about. The big news today was obviously CrowdStrike, Salesforce. Let me bring up your earnings calendar here, which I did not have ready for you. I did not see a fire at the Rivian plant, VB. Was that here in California? I did not see that one at all. I was waiting to see if I could get 1% on the $10 puts. I already own 500 shares at $16.50. Are you selling calls against that, John? I'm assuming you're selling calls against that to lower that premium down, or lower your cost basis down. All right, so here is your earnings for tomorrow. Again, it gets fairly quiet. There's more retailers, but no big names. You've got Lululemon, Best Buy, Marvell Technologies, Ulta Beauty, Dollar General, Burlington Stores, Dell Technology. I think there are a couple other smaller ones. American Eagle Outfitters, which has been a pretty crazy one. You have Autodesk as well, Campbell's Soup. So a lot of smaller retail numbers coming out. And then from your economic calendar, this is a big day tomorrow. So on Thursday, as you can see, we've talked about this GDP number, which was kind of hinted at the Jackson Hole Symposium by Jerome Powell. Slowing growth, rising unemployment, not looking good, and that could lead to more rate cuts here going forward. Right now, the expectations are that your GDP number will come out at 2.8% annualized growth, which is not necessarily great. It's not atrocious either. Other data that's coming out tomorrow, you have the goods trade balance, you have wholesale inventories for the U.S., pending home sales, natural gas storage, and then a couple members of the FOMC will be speaking, as well as other central bankers. You've got the Swiss National Bank Chairman Jordan will be speaking. You have the German Bubba President Nagel will be speaking, and then Bostic speaks for us. So there we go. Quite a lot of stuff going on for tomorrow. Okay, Bloomington, Illinois. I'll have to check that out. I did not see the stuff catch fire. That'd be nuts. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me for today. Sorry. I probably looked disheveled. I went to the gym, so I'm all greasy and looking gross with my Run DMC shirt. But it was a decent day. I'm excited for what happened with Nvidia. I actually like the numbers, and I'm looking forward to what's happening tomorrow so I can really get back in full force and start trading. Just so you know, Nvidia is still falling as we speak. It's now down 6%. Although I doubt it'll get down. Oh, you never know. Could get down to these lows we established earlier in the after hour session, down to 114. We're currently at 117. Call it 118, down 6%. All right, that's gonna do it for me. If you got questions, comments, feedback, things you want to discuss, email me, TraderMerlin@gmail.com, as many of you have done. Others, you can put down your comments below any of the YouTube videos, as I see I have quite a few who do that. So thank you guys so much. That's an old shirt. It's actually brand new. The shirt is brand new. I'm a sucker for cheap clothing. I don't really see the reason to buy very expensive clothing. There's a store called Five Below. It's $5 shirt, man. And they've got some funny, laughable kind of t-shirts, etc. And I saw this one. I'm a big fan of Run DMC from back in 1986 was my first Run DMC exposure. So yeah, I'm a big fan. What will the futures do in 14 minutes? I don't know, Mark. I think they will. When they reopen, they'll probably have some nice moves, yeah. Again, a lot of it's going to come back down to Nvidia here. So that's going to do it for me, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's go Nvidia, and hopefully you guys have some great trades to share with us on tomorrow's show. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.